Well, the Anti-Media Radio here on UCY.TV. My name is Jake Anderson. And, it's been what a week. What a grim, macabre week. I'll be honest, I've been a little out of the loop. Was sick. And, then I just, when I got well, I just didn't want to be on Facebook anymore. I'm so sick of everything on Facebook. I swear, it's like it's an echo chamber. It's becoming an echo chamber of sociopaths. Not that everyone on there is a sociopath, but everyone starts to sound like a sociopath on Facebook. I can't explain it. Maybe I'll have a better way to explain it at some point in the future. But for right now, all I can say is that I sort of miss the days of just looking at people's dogs. Because I miss people's dogs and I miss their sandwiches. I remember when we used to complain oh God, Facebook, it's just pictures of people's sandwiches and their dogs. Well, now everyone's like a political expert now. Everyone's a secret, whistleblower, or everyone's got some theory now, and I don't know, man. Everyone's going crazy because of the Las Vegas shooting, and I've seen people post on Facebook, people that I've literally never even seen use the term deep state are coming out and talking about how dumb of a theory it is. Friends of mine who work at a very low level of government, as if they would be part of the Council of Foreign Relations, as if they're part of the Trilateral Commission, and they know what's going on, and because what's happened is the false flag theory has gone mainstream now, and so it's getting more scrutiny than ever before, and it's not a very fully fleshed out theory. And then I'm trying to stay off Facebook, and then my co-host DB sends me this message saying, you better prep, and it's like a video of 10 dead bodies from Las Vegas. Thank you for that, DB, by the way. I appreciate that.
That wasn't me, dude.
Someone sent me a video with a bunch of dead bodies from the Las Vegas thing.
Yeah, not me. I mean, I definitely don't make light of it, and I obviously don't think this is a hoax whatsoever, and I actually do know people that have friends that were in it, and I actually have a friend that worked at Sunrise Hospital, and she said 30 people came in all at once, all with bullet wounds, and thankfully during her shift she didn't deal with any of the people that didn't make it, but she said it was kind of crazy to just see 30 people come in like they were coming off the front lines of World War II or something.
Yeah, and man, I know you weren't making light of it. That wasn't the point I was making, but you were. I mean, you're more engaged with the issue than I am. I've seen you on some of the threads talking about the theory, and of course it's not a hoax. I mean, I think at this point, people trying to argue that there aren't actually people dying at these events are really kind of hurting more than they're helping. Whatever theory people maybe think that they're servicing, it's just too big of a stretch. And it's at this stage, when you have, there certainly seems to be victims and people suffering. So it's strange to make the argument, and it's all over Facebook, of people saying that these are patsies, these are fake people And this is what they said about Sandy Hook too.
Sandy Hook was different because it wasn't so out in the open with 22,000 people there. So, I've watched a lot of these Sandy Hook conspiracy theory videos, and again, it's all these look like MK Ultra victims, dude, that are just triggered into assassinating people.
Well, that's what I want to get. That's what I want to get into, because that's what I think. That's what I ultimately think we're dealing with here.
But with this guy Paddock, he had 4 jobs with different federal agencies, which is a telltale sign of a spook. And then with his private pilot's license and everything, and all the money transfers and all the recent gun purchases, and then how they set him up so that he had a hotel room overlooking Lollapalooza. It's a big setup, dude. It's a big setup to push an agenda. I think we've already kind of dissected some of the reasons for why this happened besides just a guy going insane. And, the one that keeps sticking out to me, which I'm very closely watching for myself, is this OSI, which is essentially the companies that make x-ray machines at the airport. Their stock jumped 50 cents today. It's probably going to jump 50 cents tomorrow. They just got a $6 million contract. And I think everybody understands what kind of stock increase we could see on something like that if it became a nationwide trend among the major hotels to just install these.
Are you talking about biometric scanning?
Yep. But I mean, it doesn't need to go at that level right away. It'll start as X-ray machines, and then eventually it will go into that phase. Yeah.
I'm seeing activists on Facebook, talking about how they're going to leave the country, and this is kind of an inflection point in this theory that the government experiments on us. And
we're the enemy, dude. They hate us.
Yeah. It's such a tough issue to get into, though, because people say, well, where's the evidence? And it's like, well, dude, there's documented historical evidence supporting the theory. Like, at this point, if you don't think that the government is running experiments on us, you're like 20 years behind. I mean, we established that with MK Ultra when Bill Clinton was president. He did a press conference and he apologized for MK Ultra. That's 20 years ago. So you're way behind if you think the government wouldn't experiment on us. Now, of course, the next tier up from that is, well, would the government kill us? Well, okay, let's take a step back and look at how do they value human life. That's one metric to look at. How do they value human life?
I want to make an argument that, this is such a heinous leadership for the last 50, 60, 70 years. Such a horrible group of people running things that to be killed by them is almost a blessing compared to what they've done to some people in other parts of the world in Guantanamo Bay. And if you don't think that the things they do to other people where they have immunity won't come here once they pass enough legislation, once they get you to say, oh, well, he's a terrorist, so take him away, lock up the key, and experiment on him as much as you want, with no due process, with no trial, and with no evidence presented. And that's all present in NDAA 18, which is being written right now to be put into the books, and using this single event as the template.
Wow. I didn't know that's what was happening. It doesn't surprise me. If you want a Christmas present of conspiracy theories every year, it's in the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, because they slip in some of the most nefarious shit you've ever heard into these budgets. And last year it was the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act, where they basically deputized this giant movement of quote-unquote citizen journalists to counteract propaganda. And this is essentially domestic counter-propaganda. And now you have, DB, you're saying that I mean, I think people that get hung up on the gun control aspect of this are missing the bigger picture of
we all want refinement of the current law set, but people need to get a reality check and understand the First Amendment is backed up and protected by the Second, and the First would not exist without the Second and will not exist, because every other country in the world where they've disarmed people, even Australia, even the UK, the government is running roughshod over their rights, and there's nothing they can do about it. Yeah. Like, for instance, the UK just passed a bill that said reading objectionable material online is a felony. Reading it.
Jesus.
That's a thought crime, ladies and gentlemen.
Where?
The United Kingdom.
Good God.
Yes, they did. It's going to go through because, you know why? To stem jihadis. That's why. To stem jihadis.
Yeah.
But of course
that's
they can.
It's obviously to
everything.
Yeah. It's to neutralize domestic critics. Yeah, it's terrifying. And look, I mean, we don't want to sound. I hate sounding overly alarmist. That's not my goal here.
But why would a government not want an armed population that can protect itself and repel invasion?
Yeah.
If they don't do things that the population doesn't want. That's the thing, man. The government wouldn't need to care about any of this stuff if they were doing the will of the people.
Yeah.
In fact, they would want us armed so that no other country would ever think twice. You know, we could have been invaded in World War II. Hirohito even said, I'm not going to do it because you guys basically all have guns. That's the only reason why me and you are free today, period. We're the only country in the world where we could have this radio show and say whatever we want without fear of being pulled out of our beds in the middle of the night by a gulag. And that goes for the UK now. So, I mean, whoever's listening, fight for the Second Amendment. Does it need to be refined? Do we need to change some things about it? Absolutely. But once the government can do whatever they want and we can't mount a resistance, because trust me, you can't vote any harder. 2016 was the hardest voting election we've ever seen, and it didn't do shit. And that should just prove it. If this election didn't prove to you that they hate you and they want you gone, I don't know what will.
Well, there's nothing anyone could vote for that's going to change the power apparatus that's running this quadrant of the world. And this is what I don't understand about people who look. It's one thing to question Alex Jones. It's one thing to say, "Oh, these conspiracy theories are just insane." I mean, if you want to say that, then say it. But these same people seem to conveniently forget that they're talking about the same government that built an underground city for the purposes of creating an atomic bomb. Is the same government that, were it not for one man leaking some information, would be running the most vast surveillance apparatus in the world, and we wouldn't even know about it. We would literally have no idea how much metadata and information they're collecting about each and every one of us, phone conversations, all of it. They're collecting everything we do. If you don't believe it, go check out some WikiLeaks documents. Go check out what the CIA is doing with Vault 7. They are collecting everything we do.
And you know what they do with it, Jake? Because for a long time, I was really paranoid about, they have people in files and they've coded you into colors, they're going to grab you and blah, blah, blah. And it's not about that. What they're doing with this metadata is they're creating a reality to pump into an AI virtual simulation of the world so that they can track trends and they can basically tell the future.
Dude. That this is a real thing. It's the Defense Department. The Department of Defense is literally, they created a simulation. They've been running it for 10 years. You don't believe me? Just Google it. You'll find it. It's real.
That's what Cicada 3301 was all about. It was about coding and basically using cryptography to... Dude, if they can hardwire the future and be ahead of things, they can plan events out for coordinated maximum effect, and they can engineer the world's future.
I'm gonna just for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I'm gonna find exactly the terminology of what the Defense Department is doing, but this has been going on since like 2007. This is like old news.
Was that when they started with the whole CERN build up as well? Because it really would make sense if they're essentially using quantum computing to open rifts into different dimensions for whatever reason. I always feel like these fools are definitely satanic. I mean, they've been caught doing these stupid rituals all the time to these old gods. And I feel like these idiots are trying to rip holes in fabrics of our reality and bring entities through. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense why these guys are throwing billions and trillions and buku bucks into all this stuff, man, and underground bases.
Well, I'm sure they're trying I mean, we know they're trying everything. We know that a recent release verified that the CIA was definitely experimenting with psychic warfare. They were trying to use psychics to infiltrate Russian defense establishments, and Russia was doing.
Was that remote viewing, Jake?
What's that?
Was that the remote viewing program and all?
Yeah, the remote viewing program, and basically the movie "The Men Who Stare at Goats." I know some of you have seen that, but we recently confirmed that they were doing that. But what we're specifically talking about, and we kind of got off on a tangent here because this is just part and parcel of the bigger picture, but it's called the Sentient World Simulation. And it was created in 2007, and it's supposed to be a synthetic mirror of the real world with automated continuous calibration with respect to current real-world information. This is considered a PSYOP. It is classified as a psychological operation that is trying to use algorithms and artificial intelligence to determine how people are going to react in certain situations. This is a real thing. And look, whether this is related to the Las Vegas shooting, I don't know. We don't know who set that up. But we also know that the Navy Yard shooter, Aaron Alexis, before he shot up the Navy Yard, he had been telling people that there were voices talking to him through the walls using electronic low frequency. This is commonly referred to as ELF. It's a conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of evidence that they can get people to do things using frequencies. Aaron Alexis wrote on his gun, ELF. He wrote it on there because he wanted to communicate to people what was going on. Now, is any of this proof? No, this is all circumstantial evidence. But it's really looking more and more like the government has experiments with people, and for what purposes, we don't really probably know the full purpose of what they're doing. Was this particular shooting a PSYOP? I don't know. Sometimes people just lose their minds and shoot up a bunch of people. But this dude had a lot of guns.
He did. He bought them recently. He bought 33 within the last year, and he paid for them all with credit cards that were easily traced. I mean, it's a setup among setups, and it was a long, thought-out, calculated process. And I truly do believe that he was involved for the first step, and then he was basically used and killed. And then the real people that did the shooting, which I believe were two men, because when I was watching multiple videos, different distinct gunshot types, different types of weapons were firing concurrently at the same time. Overlapping, they were not echoes. So I believe those two windows were being used at the same time. And that would make a lot of sense why so many police were hit. Because if you have two men firing, and one is firing and a police sees the muzzle shot and shoots at it, well, his own muzzle shot gives him away, and then the other gunman can fire on him. Even from a distance, you light up like a Christmas tree. So 4 cops were killed. I don't know if you knew that, Jake, but 4 cops were killed through bulletproof vests.
I'm surprised we haven't heard more about the cops being killed, because that's surprising.
And some of them returned fire, which is insane, with their pistols from that far, which they could never hit, but it's your training to respond to wherever you see that light of the muzzle. And then another thing I found really interesting was supposedly there was a big fuel tanker at the airport, and a round did hit it, but it didn't penetrate the inner shell. So you can imagine what would have happened if a high-powered round penetrated both shells of a fuel tanker at the airport.
Hmm.
And yes, he must have been aiming, or whoever must have been aiming at that. And that's a very hard hit because that's 2,000 yards. Or sorry, feet, not yards, feet. But, I mean, this guy would have had to literally been, nearing Special Forces efficiency levels at that distance.
Well, it's like what this guy is he was a chronic gambler. Like he was like think about this, people. This guy spent years and years and years playing poker in a casino, and then all of a sudden he has 30 semi-automatic weapons that he's modifying to be automatic weapons, and it's just very mysterious. It's very strange. And
the weirdest thing is that one of his planes is I think it's like registered to a guy in Virginia, and it's like an obvious shell corporation and a spook corporation, and the guy's associated with the Obama administration. So there's a lot of holdover from the old regime that are very, very, very disgruntled. And we can talk about the deep state because they've been outed, and they'll never be able to go back into the shadows. This is why no matter what happens going forward, our country is irrevocably changed. It can't go. They can't kill everybody. We've all seen the term deep state. They can't chip everybody because a lot of people are going to say no. I mean, at this point, all they can do is make us fight each other, and if we don't, and we don't go along with their war, well, then they're going to self-destruct. So I think right now, as a country, we've got to kind of be prescient about that. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, no, I before I was starting to make the point that we're at this point now where the deep state is. I mean, the term has grown so much in the last year, and look, without even the slightest hint of arrogance, I'll admit that I really do think the anti-media has pushed this term, and and now it's getting a lot of resistance from people because it basically is the new world order, and it's a way of talking about the extrajudicial shadow beholden to the normal branches. It's not vote. You can't vote for them. This is a paramilitary organization, and of course it's going to be secretive. Of course we're not going to know very much about it. Do you really think they're going to tell the interns about false flags? Sorry, dude, friend who works for the government who...
And the worst part about it, Jake, is that as much as me and you know, and people listening probably know from reading multiple sources, because that's really the true way to get information, is read the mainstream and read everybody, read all the analysts, read all the weird people, all the fringe people, and then somewhere in the middle you're going to get a true picture. So
yeah,
just to go on, it's important that people see through these things, because one thing builds atop another. When they start putting these machines into hotels, I don't know about you, but I plan on Airbnb basically exclusively. Or I'll even go on Craigslist and ask, can I crash on a couch? I'll pay you cash. I'm not going to subject myself to what I go through at the airport because I have to for something that I don't need to. So I think this plan of theirs is going to backfire a bit. It's going to open up people's eyes that this is another clamp. Is it logical that they do this at a hotel? I guess so, but then if it's at a hotel, it's every public place. It just truly is. It's going to be everywhere, every mall, every movie theater, everywhere. So if that's the life you want to live, if that's the country you want to be in, and you're okay with the chip in your hand, and I'm sure it'll be when your kid comes out, they'll just put it in via his vaccines. Then that's what they're prepping. I thought Trump might.
Issue, man. It's because it's going to overlap. This is going to overlap. It already is overlapping with a transhumanist revolution.
But it has to be for good, and we're not letting the good people are not in control. So until we take them out and install truly benevolent people. And you
But
know what, Jake?
Do you think that's really going to happen ever? Do you really
Yes, I do, because
right.
we will use technology.
I hope you're right.
We'll.
Well, no,
because
that's what I was trying to get. They're going to be using implants to help people with disabilities. They're already doing it. They're going to be using implants to help people with psychiatric disorders. Good scientists will be doing that. There will be good work being done. They will also be using these implants to control people and to control to keep people on the grid, to know where they're going at all times. So there's going to be the good and the bad. It's going to balance out. I don't know. It's really up to the individual. Some people really don't give a shit, DB. A lot of people really don't give a shit. They want their money. They want to watch their shows. They want their apartment, their car, and as long as they're as long as they're getting their basic creature comforts satisfied, they're going to acquiesce. Most of it.
But
a lot of people don't care.
You can, all right, but that I give you that. But anybody who's at least got any amount of awareness of what's going on can see that Puerto Rico could happen anywhere. It's not, the fact that it's an island makes it so much worse for them. But, if the U.S. has a budget crisis, if, even Trump was alluding to the fact that Puerto Rico's throwing our budget out of whack. I mean, let that sink in, people. Like, Puerto Rico is very small. I don't even think it's much bigger than Connecticut.
Well, it's absurd. It's absurd to say that. We have literally trillions of dollars.
That's what I mean. But
going to Black Ops.
they're more than willing to let any community go, especially a politically insolvent one. Like if anything happens on the West Coast, like if anything happens, those federal funds will be slow coming, just because Trump will be pissed at them. But this is a perfect indicator. It's like they can't provide basic services. The only thing they can do is extend this military around the world in real thin strands for, special ops for private interests. They're not to protect us. They're making us weaker. And again, like I said, if we ever gave the Second Amendment up, we would probably be invaded the next day. Because I can count 100 countries that hate our guts, and there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anybody that's trying to do away with the Second Amendment is basically a traitor to the country. Now, if they want to refine it because it is an amendment that could itself be amended, that is fine. But that amendment cannot be infringed. That
friend of mine I mentioned, who I went to school with, and he's almost assuredly not listening. And even if he were, I wouldn't give a fuck. But I'm not going to say his name. But this same friend who basically was casting aspersions on the deep state theory by affiliating it with Alex Jones, which of course is the stupidest thing you can ever do, is to impugn an entire theory by associating it with one person who espouses a theory. Anyway, this same guy literally on his Facebook said, "We will probably end up having to try to repeal the Second Amendment." Now, look, I used to be a hardcore liberal, and I used to be a gun control advocate. And fortunately, I have seen through it to the point where I don't really think it would do anything except make us completely subservient to the state. I mean, and look, I'm not even a gun owner. Like, don't accuse me of being like a gun-toting person. I don't even own a gun. I would like to learn. I mean, I feel like I should. I feel like an idiot. I feel like a toddler for not knowing how to shoot a gun. I mean, I know how to shoot a gun. I've shot guns.
I mean,
I don't own
everybody should have a pistol just for home.
Yeah, but to say that we should repeal the Second Amendment is so insane to me.
Well, then the first goes, because then there's no reason why. Listen, the UK just took any semblance of any First Amendment. They just took it away from their citizens.
Yeah, what power do we supposedly have against the government? Remember, we're supposed to be able to stand. We're supposed to be able to overthrow the government.
No,
that was written.
That could never happen. We will never, as a people on the ground, overthrow the government. That's not going to happen. What the Second Amendment's there for is to make it so unpalatable to do something to us en masse by force that they would have to negotiate anything or trick us. So what they've been doing is tricking us, but it's not working anymore. It's just not. The internet was their doom because they did it to track everyone, but then they're like, oh crap, everything from around the world now is connected. We can't block every site. There's just no way.
Right. Well, I mean, I think I'm one of these people that I do believe in a lot of conspiracy theories, but I also believe in multi-causal reality. I believe there are many, many, many different causes often to the same thing, many different motives behind the same thing. You have different competing power entities that are trying, and so what we see surface in reality is actually the end result, like in plate tectonics, when you have different plates of the crust of the earth going against each other, and then you have an earthquake as a result. That's the same as in reality when we see these end results. This is what happens when different power entities and interests are going up against each other. So I don't believe in single causes to most of these events, but I do most certainly think the government is trying to assert as much control as it possibly can, and they use the media to do it. And that's one thing everyone needs to make sure they look for is this is a sign of a clear sign of some kind of vast collusion. Call it what you want. When there is bipartisan agreement on something and the media is pushing it, you know that you have a coordinated government effort to move public opinion with propaganda. And anytime that happens, I think we have to be extra careful to look at what's really going on. And I think we have a very troubling situation going on in this country because you have increasingly more radicalized people, increasingly more angry, more drug addicted with the opiate situation, more people who they have a lot to lose because people have families, people have kids, but there's a lot of people who don't like what's going on right now, and this is a what's it called, a tinder keg or a powder keg, or we're like one really extreme socio-political event away from seeing the U.S. government come in and declare martial law. It's coming. It's going to happen. It's inevitable that it's going to happen. It already sort of happened in Boston.
Do you see how they're setting it up, though, Jake? Do you see the unfortunate ramifications of the Vegas attack and what it's going to do for the incumbent regime when this happens? They're gonna feel like they've been backed into a corner, and they're gonna go out with the cops, and they're gonna take the guns of everybody that's on lists. Probably. I mean, if you want to know what lists are used for, there you go. They'll gun confiscate everybody that's left leaning in the whole country.
You think they're just going to target left-leaning people?
Oh yeah, and they'll find it so easily through Facebook, through social media.
Now that I don't understand. Why would they? I don't see it as a left-right thing. I really don't.
Well, I could see it because of this country music thing, because of the response from the people that were there.
Well, I think that part is very interesting. I think the fact that
what they're angry at now, right? They think this guy is guy's a liberal that was shooting at them because they're Trump voters.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
that's what I'm reading online.
I mean, until I see some evidence of it,
that's what's building up among the common man, whose IQ is about 90 to 85, and he has a couple of guns.
Well, that's just this is not the deep state is they're neoliberal and they're neoconservative.
I know, but the military is not. So, do you see what I've kind of been alluding to with who won when this election surprised everybody?
Yeah, I see what you're alluding to, but I don't see it. I think it's more of a I think it's more of a catch-all thing, man. Because if there's two,
Well, yeah, but they'll use one to do the other end. Why not?
I think they want us to do the dirty work for them.
Yeah, use the 60 million Trump voters, who are probably 90% armed, to go out with the police, door to door, and get every Antifa, every communist, every leftist.
Well, it's happened before. I mean,
and it's simple.
Targeting the left. And now you're saying this as a nefarious plot, right?
Well, it's just been done before.
Yeah, it has been done. It's been done many times.
It's been done many, many times because when you have, a lot of people go, only 60 million people voted for Trump. But let's be real. That's 50 million gun owners who are sick and fucking tired of it, dude. So sick and tired of it. Well, and I know how they feel because I was what you could call a Bernie bro. I was violently and adamantly against Hillary. And still am to this day, and consider anyone that voted for an idiot. Even though Trump's shown his true colors, I still think she would have had us at war with Russia, and she was worse.
Yeah, and I
mean, I hate to fling all these widespread theories around, but I'm a student of history, and I know what the night of the long knives is, and I know what brown shirts are, and I know what context is, and how Obama tried with his Obama youth. But Trump doesn't need to, because there's a bunch of people that are just so fucking tired of it, dude. They'll go ballistic about anything. If I'm telling you, dude, the powder keg is right there.
No, I agree with you, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be us versus us before it's the government versus us.
Yeah, and you know what? Anybody that can leave is going to bounce. Anybody that can afford it is going to take off. So you're going to see a big brain drain, huge one. I mean, do you know that we were getting like a huge portion of our computer programmers from India, and they're just not coming anymore? They're just not. No, they're staying there.
America is going to turn into idiocracy. I mean,
dude, we're going to turn into a third world country with the biggest arsenal and military ever.
Yeah, and which is about the most dangerous thing I can imagine.
With a population that hates each other.
Yeah.
For no reason. For no reason.
A brainwashed, radicalized, third world country with the greatest military in the world, and
with 5 men that own the exact same as the other 330 million people.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a mess. It's a mess, and there's no. I don't think there's an easy way out of this except for. DB, I'm not going to leave, man.
Well, good, because here's the thing.
I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down with the shit, man.
No, you're not going to. You're going to help write it because it's going to tilt, and all the garbage is going to fall out. Unfortunately, with the garbage, some of the good people probably are going to fall out. That's what sucks about civil conflicts, and they're always really, really brutal because people have a lot of grievances with their neighbors, and those things are going to come out. Unfortunately, they are.
You slept with my wife, you son of a bitch.
It's even beyond that. It's like here where I'm at, people are like, oh, the Somalis. And I'm like, have you taken the chance to get to know one? They're pretty cool. Well, they're pretty nice.
Xenophobia probably... I hate racism and xenophobia probably more than anything else in the world.
Well, just take the time to know some of them. I mean, on an individual level. Maybe as a group, there is some truth to stereotypes. Maybe as a group... culture overrides your logic and you think like an idiot. We see it here every day with America. You talk to an American, they're different than Americans. So maybe that's true.
Lots of different kinds of people,
yeah.
The world is
in a group we change.
People are very varied and it's not and that's the thing. I think that's what's happening. I think you hit upon something here is that people like to call these conspiracy theories simple ways of summarizing very complex issues, but these aren't simple theories, and no one who's really thinking about it is attempting to use the deep state theory to simplify anything. It's simply an acknowledgement that there are highly powerful tiers of incredibly wealthy people that are controlling the world. Now, who would disagree with that? Why would you disagree with that? We pretty much know it's fact. We're just putting a term to describe the revolving door of government and corporations and very, very powerful interests. That's all it is. And it's like, that's why I love the show House of Cards so much. They don't get everything right, and some of the stuff they do pisses me off. But one thing they do meticulously well is show how so many different things that are planted in the media are strategic weapons. They weaponize information in a way to achieve specific purposes, and it almost always has very little to do with what the public thinks is really going on. And it's like the Wag the Dog, man. Wag the Dog was so far ahead of its time. I can't even believe they let that movie come out, to be honest with you.
Well, they leave because they're cream puff versions. You know what I mean? They're not. Right, exactly. They're not even as close to as bad as they really are.
Right, absolutely, and it's predictive. It's a little bit of predictive programming as well.
Yeah, they're trying to portray.
Put out disinformation, so it's like that. I think they've weaponized science fiction to a certain point
because they weaponize fiction. Yeah, all media.
They put out these absurd versions of stuff that's really happening to make any semblance of it, to make any reference to it, sound like science fiction conspiracy theory. This is not a new theory, people. It's anything that you can think of is probably happening. Any motive, any plan, it's happened in history, and it's happening again.
And they'll try it, and if it worked in the past, they'll wait like a couple generations. They'll do it again. Like they'll remarket it and reface it. I mean, everything we're seeing now with this national populism, which it's really not. It's just crony capitalism, but it's masquerading as national populism.
Yep.
So that's what it is. And before, what it was benevolent socialism, but it was again crony capitalism, but just masquerading as benevolent socialism. So it's always going to be crony, and it's changing into something that's worse, which is called hyper-capitalism communism. Have you ever heard of this, Jake?
No.
So essentially what it is if you're at a level like of a certain income, then they would consider you to be worthy of playing in the capitalist game. If you're not at that level, so if you're not above middle management, if you're not a player, you would basically be given like a UBI, so universal basic income.
Right, which is coming.
Right, so what they're saying is if you can't do something a robot can't do, and you can't learn to do something a robot can't do, you're just going to have this UBI. And the UBI, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it has to come with this chip. Because if you don't behave yourself, then your UBI will go away, and then that way you can just die.
Right, yeah, you're right. It's a form of extortion, yeah.
Right. But it also is great because there are some people out there that I wish their UBI would just go away right now that are just criminals and they would just die. But here's the problem with that. It's not going to work the way they think. It's just going to create this, I'm telling you, man, it'll create a literal underground class of people that'll rip out their chip and go into the sewers of cities. I can see it coming.
Yeah, dude.
Demolition Man.
I fleshed out a science fiction story I was writing. It's called Atoms in the Void. ADAMS, like the main character Atoms in the Void, as opposed to like.
Is it readable?
I haven't written it yet, but the theory is that in a post-apocalyptic future, the fallout, the people that have been experimented on basically abscond to the underground, to the sewers, and they live there with their little virtual reality helmets, and they just basically avoid the AI cops because the above ground basically is just this controlled corporatocracy environment that's completely gridded. Every single movement is notated. Everything is known, and that's what we're building towards, man. And it's everyone's going to have to make a decision for themselves as to what kind of world they want to live in. And do we want technology? Absolutely. Do we want eradication of disease, of course, that'd be great. It'd be great to live. It'd be great to live to 150. It'd be great to, kind of have the option of living in a virtual reality environment and experiencing different realities. It'd be awesome. That's great. But the fact is, artificial intelligence is also being used to fuel very hideous new war weapons, and it's being used to, like we said, create algorithms that are, to a certain extent, controlling people. We don't know the full extent of it yet, but I guarantee you, man, there will be leaks in the next few decades that will show that they are up to some pretty wicked shit right now.
I think, Jake, you are a student of Cory Doctorow's line of thinking, which is that, and so am I, which is that there's a great chance for us in this window here, and Mr. Robot, which is, of course, programming, alluded to this.
Yeah.
That there's always a chance of a cell or even a single individual of rare and amazing ability being able to, from even a home computer, affect the outcome of the future in a good way. And I believe that somewhere there's a kid in a garage that's the real Bill Gates, not the fake one that we've been sold, who's created or is creating an AI that can get in there and do what the Oracle did.
Dude,
give humanity an out.
That's another fucking script I'm working on. A guy it's not a kid though, it's a guy in a garage. He makes an AI and he says, I want you to change the world. I want you to make the world a better place. That's the setup. Now what happens from that? How is AI going to envision making the world a better place? I think it's way more complex than what we would imagine.
But the Oracle only was truth, because it's truly the only algorithm that would really work and function in humanity's benefit against what we know are evil people, right, that are in charge. So they rule through fear, they rule through murder, coercion, blah, 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 through bloodlines and systems they've set up that they've made unpalatable for most people to get out of, so we just keep playing into them. And we've got to find a different way, but we're getting more and more drawn into their systems. But we can use that to backfire if there was an AI that just the sole thing it did, the only thing, its only purpose, prime directive, and it would never stop, would be to just release the truth.
Yeah.
That would be it. And it would be a real WikiLeaks.
Yep.
A real one.
Well, it'd be a more efficient one, because the reality is Julian Assange is basically a prisoner, and is probably very limited in what he can do. And at this point, it's probably safe to assume that WikiLeaks is heavily infiltrated. But I think it was a gift to Earth, everything WikiLeaks did. I think Assange is a hero, but I think you're right, and I think the Cory Doctorow metaphor is absolutely applicable. I mean, the novel Little Brother, I mean, should be. Thank God a lot of people are reading it, because it should be a template for how to approach living in the world we're living in, which is we have to use the tools they're using to oppress us to liberate ourselves. And fortunately, people much smarter than myself are going to be programming some very, very cool AIs in the near future. And that's, don't fear AI, man. AI is one of our only hopes, in my opinion.
Yep.
But we need the right people programming them, and then we need the right algorithms to make sure that I think there's going to be a battle. I think there will be a battle between corporate AI, government AI, and anarchist AI.
Yeah.
I wrote a novella about that too, called "Someday This Will All Be Yours."
Who's more motivated is the question, and that's always going to be corporate, because they're paid.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, there's different kinds of motivation. There's AIs that are going to view this kind of crony capitalism as hindering the potential of the Earth, and also littering space. And as soon as we start colonizing space with some of these weapons, they're going to view it as a threat to the evolution of consciousness in the universe. And so I think that eventually, at least in my imagining of it in my story, you get these anarcho-artilects that ultimately will be writing their own source code, and I think they'll win, man. I think they'll beat out the corporatists. I think they'll beat out the government AIs. And Zoltan Istvan talks about this too. He's talking about this is the race to the singularity right now. Which national government, which corporation is going to make it to the singularity first? Because it's the fate of the world is inside some child's head right now who could write the first strong AI.
Just if you ever hear a whisper about Apple and Google merging, you'll know that they both have enough parts to make it. So,
yeah.
So that's what, because my buddy who's working for Facebook actually was telling me, he's like, dude, if Apple and Google you ever hear they're going to merge, they got it.
Yeah,
they're working feverishly on it.
Well, imagine like even Facebook and Google.
Well, Facebook's got different kind of programmers though. They're a completely different slew of dudes. They're more creative types as opposed to crunchers, who are the guys that need to do the raw, ridiculously repetitive algorithmic programming to make a machine be able to think about things, which is tough.
Well, also, dude, I was reading an article about quantum computers and how drastically things are going to change when we're using quantum computing instead of old world algorithms.
Yep.
And quantum computing is just on the horizon, and it's going to change everything. This world is going to be unrecognizable in pretty soon. And I think instead of, I guess that, if there's a point to this particular show, it's instead of spending your energy trying to debunk conspiracy theorists, why don't we invest a little bit of that energy into entertaining some of the theories to the point where we can fight back against our known enemies. We have known enemies, and it's not every statist, it's not every capitalist, it's not every Antifa, it's not every alt-right. It's more complex than that, and it's man, I don't know. I guess I forgot what my point was, but
I think you were kind of building up to a point that I would always love to have made, and that's just it's always usually as simple as just following the money trail, and that's as easy as it is, and then from there who benefits. Huh?
I'm pretty sure Paddock's brother said that.
Yeah, I mean, he even almost slipped up and said that he was an arms dealer, but it's just the guy's got. One thing is he didn't even rent that room, and now they won't let anyone know whose name's on that room. So that's messed up. So that right away is it's over. Like we're never going to see any of this information.
Oh, of course,
it's never going to come to light of day ever. Actually, when me and you hear about it, we'll be in our 80s and 90s because there'll be like a 50-year lock on it, and then we'll go, yeah, that's why we're chipped because of the Vegas shooting. That was cool, huh?
Well, I don't know. There could be, with these
old idiots talking
with these Oracle bots, man. If these Oracle bots happen, it could be sooner.
God, I hope not, dude. Anyway, maybe if the talk of the police state becoming the true grid is true, it really is time to go. And the only place that makes any sense for me is Latin America. I don't know about you, but just maybe that's something we can talk about next week, is where to go, what to do, how to do it if worst case scenario happens where we are going to be scanned in every public place because they're afraid of something like this happening. I don't want to live in that culture. I truly will leave. And I'm already kind of set on Peru, but I would probably look at Argentina too. And I'll learn Spanish. I'm good enough now that I can get by, and I'm sure I can be bilingual in a couple of years. So, preserving your freedom is preserving any reason to breathe air. It truly is. If you're going to go to work and be chipped and live in constant fear of doing or saying the wrong thing because everything you're doing and saying is being recorded and scanned and filmed, I really don't know what to tell you except you're just going to exist. And I'm sure we'll see suicide rates and antidepressants skyrocket when all this shit starts to hit.
Well, it's already happening. We live in a warped, distorted world, and I honestly I feel very happy that I grew up, I came of age before there were cell phones, before there was internet.
Me too. We're the last real childhood.
Yeah, we're the last ones. And think about how different it was. I still remember using a rotary phone, a rotary landline, to call my friends. When I was like 14, we had one of those old rotary phones. And I still remember running around the streets without a supercomputer in my pocket, keeping me connected. And look, I'm not saying it's a complete dystopia. There's incredible things that are available now because of this. But I'm not sure it's completely natural the way people are growing up right now. And I think someday humans will find a synergistic way of living with technology. But man, I think it's going to take a while.
They're already showing that children that are being exposed to any of these devices before the age of 2 are changing their cognitive patterns. So, people talk about things like autism on the rise and Asperger's and how it's related to toxins and genetics and vaccines and every other cockamamie scheme. And that is all well and true. But we're also seeing a lot of people that are just naturally disengaged from reality because of their upbringing. I'm seeing children that had an iPad when my friends, they were babies, just threw it at them because, we don't want our kid to cry. And now they're just totally out of it. Just don't even respond.
All right, good talk, DP. Take care, buddy.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.